Hello, I'm Derek Wheatley and welcome to the Wheatley podcast. Thank you for listening, liking and subscribing to the podcast over the last couple of episodes. We put out one yesterday and we're recording almost instantly again because we have our first guest coming over. I'll let you into a kind of a little insider secret about the last podcast. I did record it initially, and as I was putting on the music to it, the software crashed and I had to start over again. Now, I was kind of I was very tired. I was sometimes between 12 and 3, it sometimes happens where I get this kind of tiredness coming over. I get a bit fuzzy headed. I sometimes feel as if my tongue has swollen or something, like I'm slurring my words a little bit. So I probably should have recorded it a bit later in the day, but the OCD in me just kind of kicked in and I said I have to do it now. So I haven't listened back to the episode. I gave the episode first to John, who listened to it, and he said it was good and he enjoyed it. I decided, I didn't have it in me to record it a third time, so we just went with it. So I hope you liked it. I hope you got something from it. We have our first guest here today. So I want to welcome the owner and head coach in Fusion Training Centre in Athlone, who, by the way, is also our sponsor. And the first thing I want to do, it's Martin Hickey is here, by the way, and I want to make sure that the social welfare know that he is not giving me money for this podcast, because they cannot come after my disability. Welcome to the show, Martin. How are you today?
Yeah, great. Thanks a million for having me on.
No problem at all. Could you just give me like a short history of where you're from and where you were born, and just short, keep it kind of concise if you don't mind.
Yeah, so prompt and to the point. In 1985, so I was born in Ballinasloe and we grew up in Athlone, down the Strand. When I was about 9 or 10, we moved out to Lecaro. I think we were living out there till I was about 19, and then my parents moved off to the Caribbean. Great spot. I was then promptly sent home to join the army. I was in the army for 7-8 years. Went twice overseas, and when I came back from the second trip, it just kind of wasn't the same anymore. There wasn't the crack we used to have, and I knew it just was time to move on. So I was kind of getting really heavily into exercise, training, martial arts, and I kind of discovered that that's what I wanted my passion to be in. And so we kind of went ahead and opened Fusion Training Centre against everybody's advice.
But what kind of got you into the fitness side of things? Because I know you do kickboxing and Jiu Jitsu and CrossFit and things like that. What was the initial? Was it the army or was it something else that got you into it?
I think I was always fascinated by martial arts, and it was always something I wanted to do, but I don't think it was readily available. So when we were growing up in Athlone, it was either boxing or it was karate. And I had tried karate a couple of times, but it was just at the time, I think the school that I was going to kept moving around and it just didn't suit. And then we ended up out in Lecaro and there was nothing available out there then, So it was just something I always wanted to do, but it just wasn't readily available. And then when I kind of tied in with a friend of mine overseas, Aaron McGrath, we started doing some kickboxing. Then I came home, we tied in with Sid Allen, who was training Jiu Jitsu and MMA, which was fascinating to us. And that's kind of just went from there and spiraled away,
Right, so here's a big question, because I mentioned in another podcast that in one of the other episodes that I do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu out with you, and that was kind of my kind of entrance to Fusion. Obviously, I'm doing a bit of CrossFit now as well, but can you, because people ask me all the time and I can't describe to them what it is. Can you do that?
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's a non-striking martial arts, which means there's nobody hitting anybody. It's a grappling art, so it's all based on like locks, takedowns, throws, using leverage against your opponent and different types of pressure. It has a good collaboration of both wrestling and judo, so if you have any understanding of that, it kind of brings them all together. I suppose that's kind of like the easiest way to put it without kind of showing somebody a video.
Because the one thing about what I found about Jiu-Jitsu at the start, it was my friend Shane, I mentioned him before, who really got me into it and got me to phone up Fusion and have a chat with you and kind of start in there. It's a very strange martial art when you are when you when you're watching it, if you've never done it and you're looking at it, it's a very strange thing to kind of work out because, you know, people have said to me it just looks like two guys rolling around the floor, which it does, like. And like you or me could look at it now and see what someone was going for.
Yeah.
You know, so when I looked at it with the kind of you know, innocent kind of eyes, and I saw just basically two guys rolling around the floor, I had no idea what was happening. What do you just from saying when you started now? Obviously, you're a purple belt, so you're very advanced at it. But when you started out, what was it that kind of attracted you to it once you were when you were on the mats, I should say?
Yeah. I think, like, just as you said, when you're watching two people do it, you can be looking at it like, that looks kind of easy, or, you know, doesn't look as physically demanding as it is. And even yesterday we were rolling and I looked over at my heart rate monitor and it was like at 190, and I was kind of praying my partner wouldn't look over because he'd know how gassed I was. So it's just so physically demanding. But I think a really good thing about jiu-jitsu itself is that every time you go there, it's just something new. And, you know, at the minute I've been injured the last 6 weeks and this is my first week back, and even going back then, it's kind of like you forget a lot of stuff and you're rolling and you're kind of missing just little details that would make things work, and it's kind of like even reintroducing that I don't need to learn new stuff, but I just need to remember the old stuff, and the only way to do that is by applying it. You know, the great thing about jiu-jitsu is you're either able to do it or you're not. So if someone says like, oh, I think I'm ready for my next grade, then they have to be able to do certain things. It's kind of like black and white, where you look at them and you're able to say if they're at the level or not, opposed to, I don't know, a non-live martial art where they're able to do things by themselves and you're like, oh, that could work. But then in a real life situation, then it doesn't happen. But with jiu-jitsu, you know, if you are who you say you are, you better be able to do what you should be able to do, and otherwise you'll be found out very fast. You had asked me about what brought me to it. When we started, it was all MMA. Like, it was MMA I was interested in, and the jiu-jitsu was just a byproduct of that. When I first began, because kickboxing, I suppose, was my first love in martial arts, my whole jiu-jitsu plan was to stay kickboxing. And then, you know, as you kind of get deeper into it, you just start kind of falling in love with it, and it's just like every day you go, it's something new. And even though like kickboxing it's a lot, like there's a lot less movements and stuff in it, like it's really a lot of basic stuff, but it's the best guys are just able to do them basics so fantastically. And not that doesn't happen in jiu-jitsu, but every time you go, like, someone can just teach you something completely new, and you're like just mind blown once you get a certain level into it, if that makes sense. It does for you because you're there, and you know.
It's one of those things, and I will say, for as far as my mental health going into it was, when I called you, there was a certain amount of, I was okay, I was on a kind of a good kind of level at that time, and going in there into a group of people was like some of the scariest kind of thing that I could have done. Now I called you up and explained the situation, and, you know, I got onto the mats and stuff like that. It is a hugely addictive sport, and I was talking to Calvin, Calvin Doyley's one of our training partners in Fusion. We were talking recently, and it's a thing with anxiety when you're rolling in jiu-jitsu, which is basically like a sparring kind of, I suppose it's the name for sparring, isn't it? Really, rolling, yeah. So when you're rolling, you can't be anxious. Like, it's impossible, because if everything is right there between you and the guy you're with, or the girl you're with, and it's just this, it's impossible to be anxious. And then when you come off the mats, because you've kind of got a hit of how good it is, and it's very very stress-free kind of situation, you can bring that goodness away with you. So whether it's it's great if it's a morning session, it goes through the day, but even if it's a night session, like, you'll get a good night's sleep and you're up the next day and you're fresh, and, you know, you're thinking differently than maybe you would be if you weren't doing it and you're just like in a kind of anxious zone, if you know what I mean. So it's perfect for that. Now I would recommend it to most people if they had anxiety, to go in and give it a shot and, like, see how you get on. It's a brilliant sport to get into, and you know, I haven't gone into kickboxing yet. I think I did one class by accident. It was, I turned up late for the jiu-jitsu, and I ended up having to do the kickboxing, which is, I will say one thing, obviously I knew nothing about it, but it's definitely good for cardio. It's really good for cardio. We were just kicking pads that day, and because I was in Fusion and I was enjoying it and stuff, I was doing the jiu-jitsu, and I was kind of looking over at the CrossFit. Now, I had no idea what CrossFit was, so again, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to get to describe what CrossFit is to people who may have never done it.
Yeah, that's also a really tough one to
I know.
describe. People often ask me, like, what is CrossFit? And I think if you looked it up on YouTube, you'd be horrified, because you see all these absolute genetic monsters firing around weights left, right, and centre. And we're actually trying to, like, obviously we have great CrossFit competitors in our gym, but then we're also trying to just help everyday people get fit and lose weight in a way that's not absolutely beating the body down every time. So its actual definition is high intensity functional movement, constantly varied, but that explains absolutely nothing. That confuses people more. So we use all compound lifts, deadlifts, squats, presses, different gymnastic exercises and pull-ups, kettlebells, different dumbbell ones. Very few of the likes of the usual gym exercises like curls or anything like that go on. So it's more like compound that use up more muscle groups and gives us the better bang for your buck, should we say. But at its core, everything is beginner friendly, and that's the way we've kind of geared it towards that. It's like we want to help people, everyday people, get fitter and stronger, and whether no matter what their training goal is, it's our job to help them get there. So some gyms I see is like very elitism, and it kind of sends out that message, and I hope ours is the opposite. Even though we can cater for elite level athletes, and we've had professional athletes in the same class as grannies at times, and because of the levels we use, we have 3 levels of difficulty in Fusion Training Centre. It's scaled, intermediate, advanced. We can cater for all in the one session. And sometimes when you're trying to tell people that, because they've never been there or they haven't seen it, I know for a fact they just don't understand it. But it takes coming in and seeing that for yourself for us to be able to show them, because we have other PTs, like this is a real common one, like a lot of gym people who work in gyms don't want to train in their own gym because obviously they can't relax there, and then they'd be texting me or ringing me and asking me just about kind of our classes or whatever, and I try and I explain it to them, and they're like, oh yeah, but I know for a fact they don't understand it. But then if they come in for one session, then they can kind of see if that makes sense, because it's one of them things, just like Jiu Jitsu, it's very hard to verbally explain without showing someone a video of what goes on.
That's why I asked you, just to kind of put you on the spot. I said I wouldn't, but no, I would say from my experience again in fusion with CrossFit, I don't know what. I obviously said it to Martin at some point about doing it, and Martin would have kind of encouraged me to kind of try it. And I remember sitting there on my first day, and I was like, even though I've been in Jiu Jitsu for about a year at this point, I was sitting there and I was so nervous again, because these were people that I didn't know was the other side of the mats, really. So when I started there, I was really kind of hard on myself when I started, especially with the weights and trying to get the technique right. I was really struggling with some of them, not all of them, but like some of them I couldn't get my hips in the right position or whatever it was. And I lasted about 4 months. I was kind of beating myself up. I was doing the wrong thing in that I was looking at what other people were lifting. They might have been doing it 3-4 years, I didn't know, but I was looking at what other people were lifting, thinking, oh, I should be able to lift that, like, and it was really the wrong way to go about it. So when I did go back in again a couple of months ago, it was definitely, I changed my kind of view of it, and basically said I lift what I can lift, and that's all it needs to be. I'm happy enough with the cardio. It's probably pretty decent from the running and stuff, but when I came to lifting, like, I was like, oh god, I was so nervous. But now I don't even look at other people, I just do it, and it is great. And CrossFit is very hard to describe, because there's so many things that go on in it. Like, sometimes I'm still looking at the whiteboard that you write on, and I can't figure out some of the initials and what the things are. So there's so much, and it's really cool as well. And whatever you want to get into, I would say either of those, or all three, or even MMA. That if you're, that's a different level again. Because I have watched some of those lads do the wrestling drills, and it's even watched them yesterday doing the wrestling drills in the Shark Tank, is it called? Yeah,
we competition team trained there. A couple of people preparing, and yeah, it gets hard very, very fast. Yeah, and they're only 3-minute rounds as well.
Yeah.
People are.
And they're like, those lads are fit lads.
Very fit lads.
Yeah. And they're just, at the end of it, they're just like
lying on the ground, gasping,
kill, like.
Yeah.
But another thing, and I did this with you, I think it was my first round of CrossFit, and it's to do with dieting, because I'm sure it's brought up quite a lot when people go into the gym, and they obviously doing the CrossFit or whatever they're doing, but they may want to lose some weight. What is your? Because I know there's some 6-week programs that you've done, and I've done one, and I lost 5 kg during it. What is your approach to dieting when it comes to, like, whether it's what food people are doing, how much they should work out while they're doing it, and etc.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's a really tough one because a 6-week program often means that people are going to do something for just 6 weeks, and everything that we do at Fusion, I really wanted it to be sustainable. So it's kind of like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, where they're nearly polar opposites. But it's what we needed to do was speak to the clients we wanted to get in, and unfortunately, a 6-week challenge, it's an attractive advertisement, so it's a good way to get people in. But then immediately when I get them in there, I reframe it to, that this is a long-term thing, that the changes we were going to make over the 6 week, I'm trying to teach people that it doesn't have that we can make good changes that will get results, and that we can sustain it long-term, rather than absolutely bring people in. And I see so many 6-week programs and all this stuff that's kind of like more about the gym or the PT getting before and after pictures, and they really don't care about where you are 6 weeks later again. And I want our program to be the opposite of that we want you to be still moving stuff in the right direction for 6 weeks later after. So we'll say if you wanted to lose 12 kilos and you lost, I don't know, 4 or 5 in the 6 weeks, if I contacted you in another 5 weeks that you were still keeping to the same habits and that you were getting closer to hitting your goal. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because sometimes obviously people are going to come in, and I'll have to really explain that, whatever you've been doing for the last, it could be years, we need to change things much more slowly than what they'd be expecting. And sometimes people aren't ready to hear that message. They want to lose weight immediately, and then that's what's going to lead them to yo-yo and crash dieting and getting into cycles of losing weight, gaining weight, getting injured, reverse, and that's the exact wrong way to be. And sometimes it's hard because I'm a competitive athlete. I've competed at kickboxing, MMA, and Jiu Jitsu, and so I also want immediate results. But then I have to hold myself to the same standard I'm now bringing to our members and clients. So I like long-term sustainable changes, doing things slowly. I think it's the only way to get results long-term. The guys that you see that are in shape all year round, they're not afraid to eat what we consider to be cheat meals. They're having them, but they're just doing everything in moderation. They're not starving themselves. They're eating good food the majority of the time, and I bet they don't feel guilty when they do eat the wrong things, because they know they'll get straight back on the wagon. And all of that stuff is the opposite of what nearly the fitness industry is making its money off. And even another thing is, a lot of people who are selling these plans are probably are probably in a shape that they've got there genetically, rather than something that they've been following strictly. Yeah.
Because there has been some amazing weight losses in that gym, and to be fair, when I started doing it, I'd never thought about going on a diet, because everybody would kind of look at me and go, "You don't need to go on a diet." But I would have been. We set the target of 5 kg in the 6 weeks, and while it's a decent amount of weight, it wouldn't have dramatically it would have made me happier, but it wouldn't have been dramatically changed me, where everybody was kind of going, geez, you lost a bit, in the sense of like, it's a shocking thing that I've lost. So when I did it, what drove me on, and this is, look, whatever drives people on in those kind of circumstances is great, like, it really is. But what drove me on was you annoying me if I didn't do it. So I thought, like, all right, I can use that as some sort of a gauge to kind of go with if I don't lose this, I'm going to get my head wrecked by him. But if I do, it could be kind of like a little bit of a one-upmanship for me. But that's just me, because that's the relationship that you and I have, because we slag each other a bit in that.
So you did touch on something, and what makes a really successful nutrition program is like answerability. And I do the exact same. So I bring in someone, and that person, I don't know him as well as you know me, so we don't have that kind of banter, but he'll give me non-judgmental feedback, and that's my job to the client. If somebody comes in and we decided, we'll just, for example, maybe we shouldn't have bread next week because they were overdosing on wheat and gluten, and I say, look, maybe we should cut that back for next week. If they come in and they didn't do it, it's not my job to give out. It never is. And like I said, the coach I bring in, he doesn't give out to me either. He just tells me as it is. He says, you need to rest more, you need to cut this or do that, and it's non-judgmental. And that's the important thing of coaching, because a lot of the time the coach can take it personal. And I don't think I don't remember ever taking it personal, but I'm sure I might have at the start. And you kind of have to detach yourself from that, because every single person is on their own journey. I'm probably the worst to my fiance and my mother and these things, because I expect such high standards of them that I put in myself. And if I treated them like clients, they'd be getting on much better as well, because it should be just small little changes gradually. The majority of people need coaching, because what they do is they go from what they're eating, which might be highly processed food, eating out, I'm just gonna maybe 4 or 5 times a week, and then they switch to the exact opposite immediately. So they're having like salads and chicken, and they're like, I'm never going to eat takeaway again, and they're probably cutting out 40% of their calories, and then they fall off the wagon very quickly because obviously they've created this massive deficit they didn't have, so they're hungry. And this is not good for your head. It's nearly like, if somebody goes to prison internally, if that makes sense.
That's like, it is obviously very, very tough to do something like that, to lose weight. But there is a community atmosphere in the gym, and there always has been on the mats for me, because it's such a close contact sport that you can't help but really start making friends with. Especially if there's a core group in there that are there like 3-4 times a week, and you do become pally with them. And the same goes for the CrossFit section on the floor. When someone's going for a personal best, I've seen people stop to see if they get it, and that's a really good vibe either side of the mats, And I just want to ask you about you bought the gym in, how long ago was it?
The November of 2018, I think it was it? Was
it that long ago?
Yeah, it's over a year. It was 2018, I think. Yeah.
So what's the future plans for? So many.
I suppose we've been. I just want to keep doing everything better. That's the actual plan, is to be doing a better service of all around, whether it's starting more classes at different times or whatever it is. Like, I remember when we were doing daytime jiu-jitsu, we kind of started and stopped it a few times, and a couple of times literally some days it'd be just you and me, and then other times now it's like we could have 10 or 12 there. So we always kind of work off the format of, like, if we build it and we're doing it right, people will just end up coming, whether they knew at the time that we started that they wanted to start jiu-jitsu or not. People will come, and I just want to make sure that we're doing everything that we're doing now, because I always had these big business ideas and then you end up running around trying to do everything at once, and I'm trying to just pick a thing and circle in on that thing, whether it's now it could be CrossFit, and next time it might be kickboxing, then it'll be jiu-jitsu, and I want to improve that to a certain level, and then we'll switch to the next thing. But making sure that we're doing the last thing to a high standard, and we're lucky that, we have great coaches, so it makes it easy, and everybody's so open-minded to change, because when I started the gym, things were being done so differently to the way we're doing them now, and we just always want to make sure we're keeping the standards up. Like, I'd love to be, doing more classes, and because sometimes it's so busy. Some jiu-jitsu class we could have 30 people there, so when something like that happens, we know we need more classes so we can facilitate more people. So, but I always just want to make sure that whatever we do, just like in the diet, it's all sustainable, and we don't rush it, because too many changes together will just lead to something not being done right. So that probably answered absolutely nothing, but that's the plan.
No, but that's because you want to do everything the best you can, and obviously if you're overstretching, and I know that you're, especially when you have things going on like the diet plans and stuff, you have that, they have that outlet of you all the time, so they can contact you, whether they message or whatever way they go about it. You have that, and then you might have like the kickboxing or MMA or the jiu-jitsu events on the weekends. You have to go travel to that, so it's a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of things going on, but at the same time you're trying to do the best to your abilities, and that's what is the most important thing. So and I suppose I just want to, before we close out on the fusion side of things, I just want to say, like, when I was given the when you asked me about the coaching for the kids, like, and like, you won't have kind of noticed it, but when I left you asked me whenever it was, it's a good while ago now, isn't it? It could be like a year and a half, maybe
something around that,
around that. And like, you probably wouldn't have known, but I was like so thrilled, because it was kind of everything, like, it's like this podcast, like any different project that will take me out of myself for a little while is just an amazing thing, so I'm not going to thank you too much for it, because I don't get a big head, but no, it was really good. But I suppose we better hear from our sponsors that we've been talking about for the last half hour. Fusion Training Centre, Monksland Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre, or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre, train like a warrior. going to point out at the end of that ad there, warrior, right? I pronounced it correctly there, but my mother told me yesterday that I was saying train like a warrior. So, but it's quite fitting because like a lot of the time I do train like a warrior.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, so it works both ways. She said that it works both ways, so it actually does. Right, so I actually want to talk to you about, because obviously this podcast is about mental health.
Yep.
When did you become aware of your mental health, be it good or bad?
I don't actually know the exact time, but as I was only thinking about, because I obviously had a feeling you were going to be asking me about this kind of stuff. So I think like when I was playing football years ago, I remember getting really nervous. And I remember like I would like be like pure tunnel vision out on the football pitch, and I'd be just kicking the ball all over the place and everything, and I can't explain it. And then some days you'd have good days, and then other days I'd probably be nearly having, I don't know, I'm not going to say I was having a panic attack, but I was having a serious anxiety out on the pitch, like for probably absolutely no reason. So I knew then that something wasn't right, you know. But then I suppose the main one is after I got a concussion. That was kind of like the first one where I started to experience really bad anxiety and noticeably that something wasn't right, where you were kind of like, you were getting anxious, and then you were kind of like, oh wait a second, this isn't normal, something's not right. And it would actually be the anxiety that would tell me I have the concussion, and not the other way around. So yeah, so that's probably, I don't know, 3 years ago. I don't think I had the concussion when you were there. How long are you training?
No, I think it was just before that. I'm 2.5 years there.
So I was probably only coming back right then. I think it was probably sometime in year 3. But I had 3 concussions over 3 years, all probably due to overwork. And I'm not saying it wasn't from getting bangs in the head. Obviously I was getting bangs in the head, but I would be kind of like killing myself for training camps, for fights, and training too hard, not sleeping enough, drinking coffee to train late, not sleep and recover. And I suppose that's the reason I'm trying to preach that to the lads now, just about technical sparring and making sure they're recovering right. But because Kieran is my coach, but when I'm in Athlone, I'm coaching myself, you know, that kind of way. So he doesn't see me to turn around and say, Martin, just have a rest day. Yeah. So, and I kind of apply the same thing that I do with my training to my professional life and all the other stuff, that I always want to be the hardest worker, and I push myself probably a bit too hard, and some days I just need someone to turn on and say, listen, go to bed or go home, forget the training. And so there was many days I know that I shouldn't have been sparring or taking bangs because I was in Athlone, not somewhere else, where I needed someone just to say, listen, you take a rest today, you know. So. And
what did you, when you had you had one particularly bad concussion, and when you had that concussion, there were symptoms of anxiety that came with it, obviously, like you were saying. Like, how did that affect your life though in general? Like, aside from the training, because obviously you were not supposed to train when you have something like that, but aside from that, in your day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, so I'd nearly, like, if you want to really simplify it, it's like having a permanent hangover, you know, like where you're just craving shit food all the time and you don't really want to do anything. Yeah. So I was literally going from taking classes in the gym. I was just like, obviously that's my business. That's what I need to keep going. And that was hard because I knew I probably needed some more rest and less stress. And I don't know if there's any self-employed people, but it can be very stressful at the time, you know, going through certain stuff and all the stuff that you might have going on. So it can be stressful as it is. And then when you have the concussion on top of that, it was just like to a next level. And because I was stressed at the start, I feel like, so because I had 3 concussions in 3 years, the first 2 were like, you know, after 90 days I was better. So when it happened that I got the 3rd one, I was just like, should I just eat shite now for 90 days and then I'll just get back in shape like I always do. And about 90 days or maybe a little bit over that, I realised I'm not getting better. And I think a lot of it was down to stress, because I remember one of the first times, it was actually the first concussion I got. I just got an accidental bang in the gym, and I didn't know I was concussed for about a week and a half after that, and I was acting like a crazy person. I just lost the plot over absolutely nothing. I was like, what's wrong with me? And then I fell asleep during the day for like 7 hours, and then I was like, that's a very long sleep to be having in the day, and like all that stuff is kind of like a sign of concussion. So that was kind of like my first concussion, and then after that I was kind of a bit more copped on about it. But on the 3rd one specifically, it was just very busy with the gym, and we had so much other stuff going on that I just wasn't getting the chance to recover. So about 120 to 150 days in, I realised you're still concussed here. I had tried to do the return to play protocol about 40 times, which is like, you know, go for a walk, feel alright, you go to the next part, and so on and so forth, and it just wasn't happening. And I had good days and bad days at the start, and I was 100% concussed. There's no doubt about having a concussion, but I just wondered why I wasn't getting better. So there's like a little bit of a story to it. And a friend of mine, you may have him on the podcast sometimes, Ronan Brady is his name. He's a performing gymnast.
Oh yeah.
You would have met him in the gym a good few times. He said to me that there was a guy in Canada who was working with a lot of ice hockey players. And if you're familiar with it, you probably know that that's really common for them guys to be getting concussions. It's basically American football on ice, and they're killing each other. So I remember at the time I was like, I really wanted a new car, and it was the decision of whether I'm going to go pay to fly to Canada and get the treatment, or am I going to buy this new car. And I was like, I better get the fucking treatment, because if I don't get the treatment, what's the point in having a nice car? Because I couldn't train or anything. So it was a very stressful time. So we went to Canada, we got the treatment, and the guy did a lot of tests, and it was funny because he was checking out all mad stuff. Like the first day was just all tests, and he was like looking at my jaw, and he seen that was out of line. He was asking me, did something happen here? And I can even remember the punch I got from behind. It was in the bottom position. It's called turtle, if you're familiar with Jiu Jitsu. And I got a punch where I didn't see it coming, and it nearly disconnected my jaw from my skull. But it was funny that he was able to point out, and that had happened 2 or 3 years previous, like, so it was funny that he was able to see all this stuff. And he did all the treatment and stuff like that, and he figured out that I had something going on with my stomach. And basically it turned out I had a parasite we don't know the length of time, but I had been, when he said it to me, he said, had you been abroad, had you been to any countries? And about a year previous, I was after being in Thailand, and I remember getting really sick over there, so that might be when I picked up the parasite. So, and the symptoms from the parasite are actually the exact same as the concussion, which is like headaches, tired, confusion, anxiety. So had I not been there, I could have went to Canada and got that treatment. I might have, like, it could have been a long time trying to figure out what was actually wrong with me. Because at one stage with the concussion, I went to the doctor and I was just kind of explaining it all to him, and he was like, well, do you want antidepressants? I was like, I'm not depressed, I'm concussed, like, you know. And he was genuinely trying to help me, because he knew how stressed I was by it all. But I knew that if I went down that road, I could be doing that for a long time when I was trying to figure out something else. So when I came back, we started treatment on the parasite, and I cleared all that out or whatever, but without going into too much information. But but basically that was what was actually wrong. So it was kind of like there was nothing I could have done, and maybe I would have got better in 90 days. But at some point, probably because of all the crap food I was eating, was actually feeding the parasite better, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, like, you know, that we talk about anxiety with and it happens from so many different things. But when I was going through my worst, anxious phase, and where at my worst kind of depression, I had no responsibilities. So for you, it was a completely different situation because you had the gym, and then all of the things that went along with the gym. And other people have, you know, they've got kids, and I want to talk to people who have kids and who have to deal with the anxiety and depression every day. And, you know, it's worth noting that anxiety is anxiety regardless, you know, whether you have responsibilities or not. But obviously what's going on in your life is going to have a knock-on effect, like a kind of a domino thing for it. This kind of the next thing I want to just kind of touch on was it goes back into the gym, but it's really about my experience of how I called you up, but how you deal with people when they call you up and they tell you they have anxiety, depression, they're bipolar, whatever. Because when I talk to you in CrossFit, and I have a slight problem with my back at the moment, you can say to me, well, don't do this, you know, do deadlifts, do whatever it is to kind of, stay away from that area. Is there a way that you go about when people present those problems? Do you try to treat them exactly the same, or, you know, is there a way that you go about it?
So I think it's a really good question, but I think having had anxiety, I think when it comes to people, and adults especially, when it comes to just joining a new gym or entering a new environment, I think everybody nearly gets anxiety, you know. And if it's the people who don't, who I'd actually worry about, because people are nervous about coming in, and if they looked up CrossFit or Jiu-Jitsu or kickboxing, or they even went to a different gym and maybe they were doing things a lot different where they weren't being so beginner friendly to people, I think that would heighten their anxiety, you know, someone went to the kickboxing gym, you see these horror videos where the coach is literally just punching people in the face, and then they're like, I'd like to learn that. But so we always just try and explain, if it's jiu-jitsu and kickboxing, like, you're here to learn. You're not going to be live rolling or drilling or punching with people on your first day or anytime soon, really. And then they can kind of start to get less nervous, because when they come in at the start, you know, they're nervous and they're looking at people and then they're thinking, are they sizing me up or am I being sized up, you know? And that's normal. And some, I suppose, having trained in MMA gyms all over the world, sometimes that's normal, but in the best places that doesn't happen.
Yeah. People
come in and shake your hands, like, kind of introduce themselves. I went to Roger Gracie's over in London that time, and it was exactly like that. And then sure, like, someone from Ireland knew somebody I know, because the jiu-jitsu scene is not that big. And you know, I go to my coach's place in Tullamore, and even though I'm probably one of his longest, he's my coach as long as nearly anybody, some of the younger members probably wouldn't know me, but they're all really friendly to me or whatever, you know, because it comes down from the top to the people. But something that you talked about in previous podcasts there, that I think if anybody's suffering from anxiety will definitely work, is the CBT, you know, because it was the same for me when I was returning. My missus was kind of like to me, like, you're ready to start? And I was like, I don't know if I am. And, you know, and I think just trying stuff and like, whether it's going for a walk, and it started off like that, and even just going for a walk. I was living with a friend of mine, Kieran McNally, he's a therapist in Athlone, and he had a dog in the house, and like, the dog was nearly like my comfort thing, you know. Every time I go home, the dog would be there waiting for me, and the dog would just lie on me. It's like, it nearly as if the dog knew I wasn't feeling good, and the dog just hang out with me. And we used to bring the dogs for a walk and start off as that, and I started looking into other things that might help. And it was just like, if anybody said, what was the thing that actually fixed your concussion or your anxiety, and I'd have to say it was just not giving up, you know, that kind of I could have easily just went back to watching 6 seasons of whatever program was on, which I would probably watch more TV episodes in that 9 months than anything else. But it's like not giving up on yourself and being alright to have good days and bad days, and then wake up the next day and go for it again, you know, that kind of. And I think, if not just anxiety, if you really just break back down to life, and it's like the same with nutrition, it's the same with exercise, it's the same with everything. We're often too tough on ourselves. It's just like, wake up tomorrow and just try and be a little bit better, and get back on the horse, rather than thinking, today wasn't good, now I failed, you know, that kind of you know. So
well, like you say, you know, it does come from the top, in the sense, like I spoke about in the last episode, just about, you know, joining the gym and stuff. And it was the personal touch that brought me back after the first one, because I went in, and as I said, I wasn't training that day, but I was sitting there watching, and was keen to come over and start chatting to me. And then when there was rolling on, you started chatting to me. That makes a hell of a difference for people, because if they feel if they go in there, they feel a bit disconnected from people. If they're especially if they're on their own, they haven't had a chat, they're watching a sport that they know nothing about, like, you know, they're just watching people rolling around and they don't understand what it is. Like, it might be something where they'll just kind of come and go, maybe 2 or 3 classes, and then look, I'll leave, you know, it's not for me. But I do think that the personal touch in there was, you know, helpful towards my kind of recovery and my journey. And I would say, well, I've no doubt it's the same for the CrossFitters, because I know you're one of the coaches, and, you know, James and Katrina are in there as well, and there is a really nice atmosphere in there. So it's, you know, it's a nice place to train, like, you know. I'm there 2.5 years.
It's not the worst.
Not the worst. Listen, I was going to finish out if you had any questions for me, but to be honest, that's kind of putting you on the spot, and I don't really want to do that to you.
Do I have any questions for you?
You've probably asked me all the questions you needed to.
I don't know if I've asked you anything online here. I didn't actually prepare anything.
That's what I mean. I didn't want to spring it on you.
I suppose, what are you looking forward to next in your jiu-jitsu journey? Because, you know, you have some good stuff coming up. I suppose your next thing is to be going for your blue belt and that.
Yeah. I mean, the quality in there now is amazing. You know, like, it's always been really good. There's always been, when I went in there was high level. But there's a few blue belts in there now. And there's even, you know, a few more. There's a handful of blue white belts going for their blue belts soon. So the quality is unbelievable. And we've got a brown belt in David. We've got how many purple belts? 3?
2 at the minute. Myself and Keane, isn't it?
Jake as well.
Oh, Jake.
So 3 purple, and there's going to
be
there's going to be loads of blue belts. So the quality is amazing. I enjoy training. You know, I do 5 a week. On a good week, I do 5 sessions, and it's amazing. It's brilliant. what I also like about it, everybody's cool in there, you know. You do get great roles and things like that, but everybody wants to help people along. There's always like some choke that someone does to you, and you're like, what? That, you know, you've no idea. You can't really connect to what it was, and they'll show you things like that. Just as that core group, like I spoke to earlier on, it's just they're a good group of people. I like being around them, like, and I made some very good friends, like, and I suppose when I was going in there, I had kind of lost so many along the way, in the sense that, this is not speaking ill of them, but at the start of, 10 years ago, when depression wasn't really even then wasn't talked about as much, or anxiety. So I didn't know what to say to them, they didn't know what to say to me, and just kind of drifted. So when I went into Fusion, like, I didn't expect to make so many friends in there, and that's brilliant. But to be learning a skill like Jiu Jitsu and to be part of that kind of community, and the day I get the blue belt, it'll be just like, it'll be pretty, it's great anyway. And I know some people say it doesn't matter about belts, and it probably doesn't, but at the same time, you've worked very, very hard to get to it, like,
I think, because I have a black belt in kickboxing as well, like,
yeah,
it's like every belt is like, at that time, it's the most, I don't know, it sounds weird, but it's the most important thing in the world, like, because you know what went into it, and people can be kind of like, that's not a big deal. If anybody earned a belt, they'll understand, and the people who say that's not a big deal, like if they earned a degree or something like that, and sometimes you're sure, look, your jiu-jitsu blue belt can take longer than a degree. You can get a degree in 2 years, is it, for a lower, and then 3 years for a higher degree or whatever. So it's like it can take just as long as that. And you touched on it there, but there's a bunch, like there's about 5 or 6 of you guys coming through now together, and it's just absolute monsters. Like I was rolling with one of them there the other day, and I was wrecked at the end, and I couldn't see the clock, and I ended up, I knew he was going to go for it, but he went for a triangle. He didn't have it super tight, but I just knew if I just fell asleep, if I made one mistake, he was going to get me, like, but it's great, because obviously there's no easy rolls then as well, but it's just great to see that the progression is there, and that there's so many of you guys coming through together, and like you said, there's a really good camaraderie with everybody in there, you know. I suppose I do have another question for you. I think, like, the last while you were saying just like about your mental health, but I see such positivity in you and the changes and all that. What would you put that down to?
Yeah, actually, someone said it to me there yesterday in the gym, and now I can't, and I'm really sorry to that person, but they did come up to me and said, I think it was actually, sorry, it was Jonathan Sweeney said it to me, that I don't seem, and it is one of those things where you don't seem like that kind of person, and that's, to me, that's a massive compliment, because then it's a testament to what I'm like when I'm in the gym, and that I'm in good form and good mood. Now I would definitely put it down to the support I have from my mother for a start, because she's always there to chat to me whenever I need her. My father, if I go into town and have lunch with him, yourself, Josh, John, there's a group, but it's keeping healthy. Like I said, I talk about running, and I'll probably never stop talking about running. Obviously jiu-jitsu, and I do other pieces, but I do think over the last 2 years in particular, where it would be more to the gym, because it's such a consistent thing in my life. Whereas I still avoid places and things and people. I very rarely miss a session in the gym, like, unless I have to, obviously I have to do something else. It's a long time since I've been sitting at home and just feeling anxiety and decided I'm not going to go to the gym tonight, So, and for that, like, that's class, So, like I said, that has lifted my mood. The crack we have in there as well, like, because I'm in there a lot, like, people won't know, but I go in like on a Monday at 10 o'clock and I do my CrossFit and whatever, and then we slag each other for about an hour from 11 to 12 and then we do Jiu-Jitsu, and then I go get lunch and I come back for the kids' classes. But that's a great day for me, like, it's just, and I'm hanging around the kids, I do the kids' classes and then my class again at 7, and when I get home, like, I'm obviously completely shattered, but it's a good kind of shattered, and I don't know where else I could get that from, and it's not just the physical tiredness, like, it's just the fact that you got through a day, and it's kind of it was a good day, it wasn't like you're not, I think if you're sitting at home, I do find that in particular, like I said about jiu-jitsu earlier, when you're rolling, you can't be anxious, you don't have time to be, but also when you're with good people and you're with people you want to spend time with, you can't really be anxious either, and if you are, and this is the main thing about this podcast, most of those people in there know about my history, because I did the blog, or I talk about it a lot. If people who are struggling out there, if they find people to talk to, that'll make it so much easier for them. Because to me, if I just feel a bit down or a bit anxious, like, I'll just say it to you. I'll say it to Josh, whoever it is around me, and you probably able to rationalize it for me. You know, the way I wouldn't say, because it's such an irrational thing, like anxiety.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, and look, so is depression, and particular something like bipolar, where you have those ups and downs and that are very uncomfortable in that, but someone could turn around to you and say in 3 sentences something that you couldn't have found anywhere, like in your head, you know.
But you can often be your own worst critic or whatever,
yeah,
and
for sure,
like you said, I'm sure I get anxiety about certain things or whatever, and that just are totally irrational, or, you know. But it's when you're in the tunnel, it's very it's very hard to see that.
Yeah.
But you, like say you're bipolar and that, like, I never noticed it anymore. That's what I mean. Like, I never, you know, at the start you'd be 10. Now I'm high, and you know, that kind of and you could see the differences. But now you seem to manage it a lot better.
Yeah, I think I managed it better. Do you know? Again, it's another thing I talked about with therapy and stuff. Therapy is great, like, and CBT is the best one, and I said it in one of the shows. It's the best one that I've done, because it does find you a route out of these things. So it'll lead you down separate paths. It'll give you in your mind, you will go completely different ways than the dark places that you were going in the first place. So I do find now that, you know, obviously the medication I'm on is helping, but I do believe that it's more to do with what I'm doing with my life at the moment. Actions, and like this for instance was something that I came out with a couple of months ago. I was like, I'll do a podcast, and it's just something people can say. Like, it's like you just say, I'll go on a diet, but then you're not going to go on a diet. Yeah. But I was like, I'll do it, and I told a couple of people, and I kind of sometimes do that when I tell people I do something. I kind of feel, if I don't do it now, they're going to slag me. Yeah. Something like so.
You can all, like, I think we overthink about things, like, because I don't know, someone might have said something to you when you were younger, like, who are you to do this or that? Yeah. This is definitely a way for you to give back to other people, and you know, I'm sure since you started, people have messaged in about your journey and asking you questions about stuff that you get to give something back. And when I was concussed, and I was kind of nearly just at the end of it, I was coming out the other end, I was ready to change. I remember I watched the Russell Brand podcast with Joe Rogan, and he just said something about, you know, like, our actual function here is to help each other and make everyday life just a little bit less shitty. And if you're doing that every day, you're like, it's mission accomplished. And I think that this is one of the ways for you to do that. Now, I know your man Russell Brand's a bit of a head case, but I like that podcast specifically. And I, funnily enough, I hadn't liked him beforehand. I was just like, he's that space where he used to be on MTV. But after I watched that, I was like, oh, he's actually a pretty cool dude now. But
yeah, that's one other thing. Like, there are people out there that will come out with little nuggets, and it might be the person you least expect, you know. And like, Russell Brand would be one of those people where I'd be like, that's the guy who got fired off MTV for dressing as Osama bin Laden or something, like, you know, wasn't it? He did it like the day after or something, after 9/11. But that doesn't mean he's not like a, you know, an intelligent person or like emotionally connected with.
But like, obviously something was wrong with him, and maybe it was either
heroin and things like that.
He was taking the drugs to get away from what was wrong, or vice versa. But either way, this is how he's now made it better for himself, and that he can go out and help other people. So it's pretty cool, and I think more and more people are kind of like, if we said earlier, or like, I don't know, when you were in school, you're saying, I'm going to have a podcast about mental health, people would have thought you were bonkers. You know what I mean? Like, but now it's a talked about thing, and it's much better. And like, I think everybody gets anxiety at every level, you know, and it's just like, now it's becoming a lot more normal. And the more people talk about it, and even just yourself talking about your journey, and then how the stuff that giving people like a route to say, this is what worked for me, and I'm giving people a platform to come on and say maybe what worked for them, or maybe they're still in the tunnel somewhat, you know what I mean? So I think that's amazing.
I think the blog was massive, because it was one of those things, like, when I did the first episode of this, I just started talking about whatever it was. Now, I had spoken to people before about it, so it was easy for me. It was just like I was just relaying a story to someone else. It is the hardest thing to open up at the start, but when I started doing the blog, it was like, the first one was kind of punishing, you know, for people to read who knew me, because it was brutal, you know, brutally honest, I suppose. But the reward that came from that was people coming back to me or sending me a message saying, you know, well done, or I felt like that, or, you know, sometimes I get anxiety, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? Like, because it's not, this isn't, I'm not here to make money, or you know, whatever it is. It's not, it's just to kind of talk about mental health, get it out there, and see, you know, see if some people will listen and even relay it to somebody who may be struggling, you know, because we all know people who are in, like you said, still in the tunnel, or you feel that they may be heading towards it with the way they're going about their things, you know, whether it's like drinking too much, you know, whether they're taking drugs, whatever it is.
It's every year you kind of hear just one person maybe that you didn't expect, or I think it's been at least 3 people that I was overseas with. I remember I shared a room with a guy who's from up the north, and I found out only last year that he'd passed away 2 years previous, that he committed suicide, and I was just like, wow, you would never thought that guy. He was like a real busy guy overseas, and he was one of them people that always make you laugh, and he was really positive. And I can think of a bunch of people like that, so it's like, if only they had someone to talk to, or knew that it was okay to talk to other people, you know, that stigma that's attached to it, you know, because some people would have been like, oh, you can't. I know it's like in the army, it's a real stigma thing. People are like, oh, you better not tell the doctor you're out with stress or whatever, because this, that and t'other. But like, I think that's one of the worst jobs for stress and morale, and people need to talk in there, and I really wish that something would be done about it, you know. Yeah,
like that is a shame, because it there is that you know, a lot of males commit suicide, and you know, there has to be a part of it to do with the ego and the kind of idea that we have to all be macho, and you know, not show any signs of weaknesses to the people of our own sex or whatever. And I do think that women are better at talking about those things. They're more honest with their friends and they're more open. So yeah, to get men to kind of come out and talk a bit more, like, you know, you're not like, it's nothing to do with being macho. Like, it's got absolutely nothing to do with it, because it can like we touched on, like, it can affect anyone, like.
Oh, definitely. I think because we often look at somebody who may have success in a certain way, whether it's sport or money or business or their, you know, whatever it is, and you look at that person, you're like, Jesus, Michael's life is perfect over there. I bet you Michael's not sitting at home worried about all the same thing. And you put yourself in Michael's shoes, Michael is all the same worries as you, and sometimes even more. Yeah. You know, because maybe he's under more pressure in his job, or more, or something's going on with his kids or thing. But we all have it, but it's always everybody looks at the other person thinking like, oh, that person's life is perfect, or so on and so forth. I know, like, even like you think about all the famous people and things, you have the likes of Heath Ledger, and you know what I mean. So it's often, are we the unlucky or the lucky ones? You know, because I think once you're waking up every day doing something you love and actually enjoying what you do, I think that's the biggest thing in life, because everyone can get obsessed about whether it's a job they think they want or money they think they need to be making, that just takes away from their standard of life. You know?
I think the thing about famous people as well, like, it's great, you know, if they are very honest about their mental health, and because people do look up to them, especially young people, and I certainly did, I still do, like Joaquin Phoenix, for instance. He's my hero.
Who's he?
You know who he is. But it's like, if someone comes out and says that they're anxious or they're having problems, you know, with depression, whatever it is, like, don't be one of those people who turns around and says, oh, here we go, like, he's got loads of money, what's he depressed about? Irrelevant what he has, absolutely irrelevant. And there is that kind of thing, there is that sense of, like, how could they possibly feel that way with what they've got? It's that doesn't make any sense.
But I think it's more evident even now that it is anxiety and the pressure they're under. Like, look at all of them, like, they all are going off getting plastic surgery because of the pressure they're under. None of them are getting old, like, looking good or anything like that. And if you ask me, like, no, if you're off getting plastic surgery 24, like, you know, a couple of times a year, you couldn't possibly be happy.
No,
you obviously have a massive complex about whether it's getting old or your nose or whatever all these other things is, you know. Like, so I don't know, like, I think it's evident that from what you're looking at, that they all suffer from anxiety on some level. I think, what was your one, Jennifer Aniston now looks completely different, and
Renée Zellweger was another, you know,
and even the film with Renée Zellweger, when I was talking about Judy Garland,
that's right, see,
like, that she was one of the most famous people in the world at the time, and she was actually just crippled with drug addiction from a young age, you know. So it's not the chalice we think it is, it's nearly the exact opposite.
I don't think it could be because of the like, anxiety in particular. I can't imagine what it's like to be in those in the limelight all that time, people chasing after your cars, and, you know, it's absolutely why anybody would want that kind of life. To me, it seems like a lot of pressure. Or your
bicycle.
God, yeah. Do you remember that day? They were all coming after me, like, at least I was like, look, I'm not going to slag John now about not cycling his bike, but, you know, but yeah, so like, I suppose we can wrap it up.
Yeah,
if that's all right with you. That was a very good chat, though. I really enjoyed it. It went better than I expected.
Thanks a million for having me on.
No, you're welcome. It was really good. So obviously, thanks to Martin, first guest. And to be honest, I'm glad. Like, yourself, Josh is coming up next. That's a spoiler, but it's so nice to have people that I can just relax with, because obviously I've never done this before. Talking into the mic on my own was one thing, but chatting to face with someone and asking questions was difficult. So thanks very much for that, and thanks for your patience as well.
No problem.
Thank you very much to John, my partner in crime. Obviously, I'm going to say this every episode. Thanks to Ger, my mother, my father, and my grandfather. You can keep up to date with us. Our YouTube channel is the Weekly Wheatley. Same goes for Facebook, the Weekly Wheatley. On Twitter, it's #Wheatley_the. Instagram is @Wheatley_the_weekly, so it's the other way around. And the podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Overcast. There's loads of them there anyway. But you can, if you go onto Anchor, you can find all the ones that you will that it'll be on. Listen, thanks again to Martin. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.